Hello, Ways and Means Committee. We are still here together in the same place, and it is Wednesday, May 6th. And we are picking up 2 amendments to S325. There are many more amendments than that on the calendar. However, these 2 affect the revenues of the state since they relate because of the fees that are paid with permits. And so we are going to hear them. We have very limited jurisdiction over this issue, thankfully. And so I encourage folks to view this issue with that lens. My understanding is the Natural Resources Committee has not voted on the amendments yet. I think they're voting for all the amendments in a stack after hearing them all. So we won't have that knowledge to carry us here, which is a little bit challenging given that they have the policy jurisdiction, but we're going to do the best we can. With that, Representative Charlton.
Hi, Tom Charlton, Chester, Athens, Grafton, Wyndham, on the General Housing Committee. Happy to be back here. I'll try to make the best use of your time. Didn't expect to be here. The amendment that I put forward for 325 extends the Tier 1 exemptions, the temporary exemptions, to 2030. This is where the Senate had them. It's where the governor had them. It's where our housing targets are all geared around 2030. All of the targets that we've given to the different regional planning commissions are dependent on that. This extension has 2 things in mind. One is that without the road rule, if we want developers, particularly mid-sized developers, to pivot to the Tier 1 areas that we have wanted to encourage the development in, we need to make it much more predictable. They need their confidence level to begin the process needs to be very clear. And what I mean by that is our small communities are going to need technical assistance even after the future land use maps are drawn, which hopefully will be by the end of this year. League of Cities and Towns can only give technical assistance to so many towns all at the same time. So they'll have to speak to that. The developers, and we are going to have to make this feasible for mid-sized developers, the giant ones that are doing 50 to 100 units. They have the staff, they have the capacity to begin what we call the pre-planning for developments and maybe have the appetite for the risk that a mid-sized developer does not. So we are hearing currently from DHCD, from regional planning commissions, that the dials maybe are moving in terms of construction starts for housing starts. In order to meet any of these goals by 2030, the mid-sized developers that we need to engage really needed to start their planning a year ago. By that, I mean the market studies, feasibility studies, the engineering, the architects, which they really don't like to engage until they know that they have the site in hand, because it's very site specific. They have to deal after that with the financing, and depending on who's in the financing stack, it gets even more complicated. There is a large amount of fees, studies, and just in-house labor costs to putting together a proposal before you commit to a project. What in conversation with mid-sized developers, I'm in the construction world. I build timber frames. I've never built a multifamily timber frame. I think that's ever going to happen. But networking with the rest of that community, there's a hesitation to start that planning until they know that it is a clear path ahead of them. If they wait until the end of 2027, 2028, and then begin, and then they're willing to say, okay, now we're going to start looking into the feasibility and the costs and the financing stack and everything else. We won't see houses on the ground until 2032 or later. We're just, for example, finishing that was a subcontractor of a subcontractor of a subcontractor in an affordable housing project in central Vermont that we were just wrapping up now. It was just 12 units. They started the on-site engineering in 2010. So for particularly size communities, the mid-sized developers are the ones that are available. If the mid-sized developers just see it's just more predictable to build single-family 9-lot subdivisions all over the countryside, that's what they're opting for because it's more risk and unpredictability they're a big damper on any market. So bringing those extensions to 2030 gives the small developers the confidence that they can start the pre-planning, knowing that they're not going to trip at the finish line, and it's going to take longer than 2028 for them to meet our housing goals. We need these guys to be able to start their planning earlier, and to do that, they need the confidence level that the extensions are sufficient for them.
I have two questions. One, wouldn't pushing out the deadline make them less likely to start their planning earlier because they won't have the urgency of needing to finish their planning by 2028?
They'll just do different planning. They will plan for a different project. So there are some communities that want some housing that do not want the permanent arrangement. There are communities that say, yes, we do need housing, but we don't want this like open-ended forever and ever. They're not likely to get it if the developer is not confident that the municipality can get over that line. And with sufficient time for them then to do, you've got to convince the community that they want it, within the municipality. The market studies have to happen for financiers. It doesn't make it impossible, but we have people living in cars. And I don't know that they want to live in cars till 2032. This is just extending this to 2030 gives the small developer the confidence level to start all of the costly stuff they have to do before they get into the permitting process. And if they're confident that the municipality has time to get all their ducks in a row, they can start it earlier instead of waiting until it's in place.
I was wondering, Tom, because this is extending the interim housing exemptions. But by the tier 1A and tier 1B, which is where a lot of this development would occur in the future, as conceived by Act 181, that will be in effect by January 1, 2028. Am I wrong on that?
That's why those dates were there, I thought.
If the municipalities, in the smaller municipalities without the same capacity, if they have time to do after the future land use maps are complete and they know what areas are eligible, the municipality still has to make their decisions. So how fast they can do that. If you have and I have one town of 400 and plus people, they do not have a large staff. They have a housing crisis because 30% of their housing stock is unoccupied seasonal housing. They need workforce affordable, working class affordable housing.
Are you talking about Wyndham?
Maybe.
We don't have any wastewater downtown at all.
Suitable soils is the question there, and there's some parts of town that they're looking at, land that's been donated, areas that have been developed before that have had shared septic.
I guess I come back to the same question. I'm worried that actually by pushing this out, you're removing the urgency to do this, for municipalities to do this planning work, or for developers to do the planning work, sort of. And maybe that's just me projecting that, like, I do better with a deadline. I don't know.
Well, I think the developers are more willing to work with the deadline they can meet. They look at it and say, we're going to do all of these subsequent things and do it in time. They will have to do something else instead.
Remind me what the deadline is right now.
2028.
Well, it's 2028 in S325 as written. Yes, it is.
I mean, from 2027 to 2020, that's 3020.
It's gone from 2030 to 2027 to 2030 and back to 2028. And I think that even from an environmental point of view, I think without the road rule as a disincentive, I think they need to make this path easier.
Is that Maslin to do it?
Yeah, just two comments. I'm not sure where I'll stand on this at this point in time, but two comments from over time. One is a mentor of mine, clearly said periodically, get the planning up front. Before things go south. Basically, put the planning out there so that people can see where you're going and you can work with that. And the other one was that we've heard repeatedly that predictability is very, very important to any developer. And this, I just reiterate what we've heard. Thank you.
Sure. And thank you. It's particularly critical to the middle-sized developer that doesn't have massive resource.
What do you do?
Question? Because maybe I'm understanding. They want to get the planning done before the permitting. Are they concerned about the amount of time the permitting is going to take?
They're concerned about the overall amount of time all the pre-planning stuff takes. In aggregate, just the whole length and the cost of the manpower, the fees, the engineering and so on.
This particular company you're talking about?
Mid-sized contractors. So I mean, we're, so mid-size is under 50. Under 50 employees. These are specific ones I have in mind, and I haven't asked about speaking on their behalf in public, so I'm just not going to name names. We're looking anywhere from crews of 8 to 10 to total staff of under 50. And in a mid-sized town like Chester, I can speak for Chester is looking at a housing possibility. Mid-sized developer is going to be critical there. It's not going to be it's not going to be 100 units all at once. So it's not going to be a big corporation that has in-house engineers and counsel and so on. There is a program with 802 Homes right now that is offering training seminars to people smaller developers smaller builders that want to learn about development. And that is, they have several hundred contacts with that world. These are people who are considering the development. They're not of the size to be able, they can't afford the risk involved to start planning something now, so they're ready to hit the ground when the opportunity arrives. So they won't start that until they know for sure. The pressure is on the municipality.
And a town like Chester, you don't think can complete the planning work?
Chester is fortunate in that they might, but we're just at market analysis and just starting. I think we're just contracting. We're looking for someone to contract with to do the market analysis. And it's in the construction world, a year goes by so fast that it's because
Legislative world.
in the legislative world, and it's seasonal.
In the context of Chester, I was asking about the town of Chester's ability to create their own planning. Tell us not.
So Chester has a planning commission as of 2023. They have a very capable manager. And they're very engaged with the League of Cities and Towns, but they have been also for a couple of years now.
And the Regional Planning Commission as well.
So I think that they are likely, they'll be able to make their deadlines. The question is, will a developer even begin thinking about it until after they make that deadline? And what is the time period from there moving forward till we actually see housing? That's the long stretch. And if they're confident that the temporary exemptions will meet or overlap with whatever the permanent arrangement is going to be, they're more confident to start their work now instead of waiting till the end of next year.
What happens if the permit exemptions go? I'm like so far over my skis in my Ways and Means capacity here. I'm just gonna stop with that question. It was, yeah.
Is the reason this is here because the permits?
Yeah, because if we exempt from a permit, there's a reduction in fees. And so I'm feeling like what's going to make sense, given how far outside of our purview this is for us to hear both amendments and then once the Natural Resources Committee has taken a vote, then we can all just like gather in the well of the house to do a straw poll. Sorry, go ahead.
Follow up on
Yeah.
what you said. My understanding is, what we're supposedly supposed to consider what the loss in fees are gonna be in those 2 years. And again, from what Tom's saying, there may not be any, that people can't, especially the smaller developers, can't figure it out soon enough. So again, it's a gamble as far as why it's here and what we actually need to consider it as.
It seems like Tom's point was that actually there would be a loss in fees because we would need those 2 years. But I don't even know. Again, it's very hard to imagine what that will all look like in 2029. Yeah.
I think there's to some degree a but-for question, and some of this development may not.
But you don't wanna,
They don't want to go there. I did not say that. Yeah.
I mean, you're welcome to. I just caution you against it.
No, it's a question of which developers are just not gonna, they're just not gonna have to go that direction.
Appreciate that. Anyone else have any other questions? Thank you very much for bringing this.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Representative Burt? I understand that you have 2 amendments. We are only interested in the second one.
Okay, accessory
Yes,
farm business.
yes.
Yeah. Good, that's what I got here.
Welcome to Ways.
Thank you. Yeah, Greg Burt, Cabot, Dan Bill Peachum. Do you want the CD amendment or?
We can have it online. We're good. Appreciate it.
Okay, good.
Anyone else want paper?
We're supporting the forest industries.
Did you
The
see
amendment
that?
I just said.
Have you noticed that all the photocopy paper is like branded Dunder Mifflin now?
Yes, what they did.
Dunder Mifflin?
Yeah.
Is that a real company?
Apparently.
I think like the regular paper company is like, has some like co-branding with like whatever company owns the office, right? Anyway, sorry.
Well, I'm guessing I'm here because, this would have, my amendment would have no permit or permit amendment required for the construction of improvements for an accessory on-farm business for educational, recreational, or social events that feature agricultural practices or qualifying products or both, as defined in a long number.
Get the whole, sorry, I won't ask till.
Back to you.
Yeah, so this, yeah, my amendment would just allow farms to have educational, recreational, or social events feature agricultural practices or products. Currently, farms are allowed to sell 50% of someone else's product at their farm stand. But not a whole lot more than that with accessory on-farm business statute. So this would allow more without a Act 250 permit. So municipal zoning could technically, or ordinances could still apply. So there could be regulation coming from cities and towns on this. But yeah, do you want me to speak to what I think about?
Yeah, sure.
Fees or money that the state will not collect based off of this? Well, it sounds like there might be some permitting fees through Act 250 that would occur. I have no idea what scale that's happening at now, or what maybe foregone by this. So I don't think I can really speak to that myself, but I do know that it would spur on economic opportunity for farms, which economic opportunity always brings in more money to the state. So
Is the idea in current law that if it's more than 50%, then it's a business on a farm rather than a farm business?
yes,
Okay,
so you become a store at that point.
yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And then when you become a concert venue, that's the these, nuanced situations of farms being a concert venue or looking like one, is it actually a farm? How do you prove that you're a farm?
And so does your amendment basically say that you would be permitted as if you were a farm, no matter what the business is on the farm?
It basically just says that Act 250 is not going to have jurisdiction. So this is like if you build,
No matter what the business.
you're having to. This is only with regard to farms.
Okay.
And it's, if you're building something, if you're developing something on your farm for the sake of these things. So if you build a concert stage or something else that would relate to these things, then you might trigger an Act 250 permit currently. This is just make it so that would not be a part of the process anymore. It'd be, if you're going to build a stage, then maybe the town will have something to say about it. Or they might say, well, that's great. We just want your concert to be done at 10 o'clock tonight,
So like Guilford, which is right next, like closer to me than Brattleboro is, even though I live in Brattleboro, has no planning or zoning rules whatsoever. And if the farm like right down the street from me built a huge concert venue, I would want that to have to go through some degree of permitting, even if it was on a farm.
So there is that argument. What's that?
Wouldn't you?
I don't know. I think I would, I totally see your argument. I also see the value of letting enterprise happen on its own to some degree, not be overregulated. So usually those things have a way of sorting themselves out as well. And I understand the need for regulation too. Maybe it would be one way the town would decide to actually adopt their own zoning and be able to figure those things out on their own.
Questions? Yes.
There's a comment, and the conversation is kind of wandering into, there's a fuzzy area between construction permit and what you want to do there, or what an applicant might want to do there that we could have a long discussion, but I just say I'm a little uneasy understanding how this would play out. I mean, I see what the words are in the printed page, try to make a comment.
So, Greg, I have a specific business owner in my area that is an accessory on farm business and was going to start by just providing housing for farm workers, then a slaughtering facility, and then they said full-on retail restaurant. So it's gone through some really hard permitting, and I think the amount of fees spent in legal fees are huge. So, and they try to use the accessory on farm business. The reason I ask is that the land use review board was supposed to come out with a report in February, and they kicked it to September, it looks like. I'm just reviewing it. Are you familiar with their work and what they're thinking about with accessory on farm businesses?
I know that that's taking place and that the new version of S325 has a date of November 15th, I think, for a report from them on accessory on-farm businesses.
Yeah.
And I know that's an argument of, let's let the LURB figure things out instead of us trying to figure it out for them. I guess that's a give and take, right? But where do we provide the direction? Where do we say this is really what we want you to do?
Right.
And where do we let them figure it out? So obviously they have a lot on their hands to figure out. So maybe this would be one less thing they would need to.
My constituents are disappointed that they didn't come out with a findings center. Right. Yeah.
Right, and we all want this process to let's get this done. There are so many stakeholders involved. There's so many people affected, and trying to, I understand the process. We need to have the process of listening to all those who would be affected, right? So, I don't think I would assume we could still have rulemaking around this to some degree, and still allow this to go.
I think there's only rulemaking if you call for rulemaking, but it's a funny thing how like we're all want this to go much faster and we all want lots and lots of like community engagement, and those are always like almost always mutually exclusive, right? And so we're making these decisions and these amendments ahead of the process that's supposed to engage stakeholders.
Right.
Yeah, Representative Brennigan.
The thing that bothers me here a little bit is I can see that the nexus to, if you have a farm stand and you're selling apples and your neighbor is growing pumpkins, and you take a couple rows of his pumpkins over to your place and you sell them for him, or you buy them and resell them, either way, that has to do with farming. But a concert stage or a venue for a wedding, that doesn't have anything to do with farming. It's a different business.
Yeah, I see your point. I see your point. I own Bird's Apple Orchard in Cabot, and so agritourism kind of, it's a new, it's really the future and the current landscape of retail oriented agricultural establishments. It's been morphing more into an experience than just come here and buy something from me, because people are really looking to have a connection with farms, and they don't have it where they currently live for the job that they might have, and they want their kids to go out to a farm. And so we have like Choose and Cut Christmas tree farms, as a classic example. You pick pumpkin patches, pick your own apple orchards. That's definitely rooted in agriculture. But I have a playground, right, where people are just hanging out, or you might do wagon rides. But then I have so many people that ask me, can I have my wedding here? Because they have a special connection to our farm. And I'm like, I'm not interested in weddings personally. But somebody else might be, And I see there's a broader context where we pride ourselves in the state, in our rootedness in the land. And farms really provide a hub for that. And it's not just going to be a place where you go and buy something anymore. It's going to be a place where you experience something with friends and family. And that's where I think it's important that we foster that.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out, so the farm in my area that I probably spend the most time at, they, in addition to like being where I get my milk and my meat and my vegetables, they have concerts there. Like, well, they used to have them once a month, but then they had a baby, so it's like less than once a month now. And they have they have like one of those farm dinners in the field once a year. Yeah. They're doing all those things.
Yeah.
And it's not more than 50% of their business. And if it is, then is it still a farm anymore? Which is a question that I think is totally outside the jurisdiction of this committee, but sort of at the core of your amendment. I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, and I don't know if this amendment really say, 50% of the current statute says 50% of your income needs to come from products coming from your farm. I don't know that this would say 50% of your income needs to come from something related to pure agriculture versus, ticket sales.
But it sort of says that question doesn't matter anymore in the context of permitting, right?
And it gets a little nuanced in I've had plenty of people who asked about having live music at our farm. And you don't necessarily charge people for that to come listen to music. You might charge them for other things that are actually farm related. You might be a member of the farm through CSA. I don't know, it would get potentially pretty hard to regulate at some point. So, and I think that's where, what are we actually worried about? Bad actors or not necessarily bad actors, but things that get really popular in a hurry that we don't predict. And you have traffic problems and parking issues and noise issues, and people saying this used to be a quiet place on this back road. Now it's turned into a real thing that a lot of people show up to. I understand that. I do. But I also don't want to nip in the bud opportunities for our farms are needing new opportunities. I think most towns have zoning and ordinances that they can apply, and they can figure out things for individual cases and that, because it's just very nuanced, whether it's on a tar road, class 3 road,
All those things, yeah.
All those things, and the Lord can, I would assume this isn't taking jurisdiction, I believe, of accessory on-farm businesses from Act 250. It's just allowing a little bit more leeway for farms to do things.
And I think, farms these days in particular really need to look for other, revenue bonuses to be able to keep up. We still want to see the fields cut and maybe a few beef animals out in them or whatever it is. That isn't going to cut it anymore. So they have to look for these other venues to make it go. So I think it's super critical that we make it as easy as possible for them.
I'm thinking about, when someone said, can I listen to music on the land? And the first thing that pops up in my mind is, you're gonna have to get insurance coverage for that. So what is an insurance company gonna say? Well, how do we know that your people are gonna be safe, not walking into a ditch, whatever? So here in this case, Representative, oh, I want to hear this.
Oh, okay.
Is that you want to be insured for things that you're doing on the farm.
Right.
So if you've got some regulations, if you've said you've met some permit requirements, it's going to be easier for you to just get some insurance. And then you have a defense.
I don't know about easier, but it's still, like you said, there's an extra cost already in insurance. If somebody wants to take on something like that, absolutely. But to add it to all the other costs, where I could 50%.
But that's not where I was going. I'm going to, if you're going to get insurance coverage and you can say, well, I've met these permit requirements, that's got to be something that an insurance company, if I were running insurance company, I'd say, well, good, now I know that these things are met. People will be safe with their parking. They won't get hit on a long country road when people are parking and, moving from their cars. Those things actually figure into what an insurance company cares about and would keep the rates lower for you and make it easier for you to get the insurance. So I think that's what I wanted you to hear. The other thing is, you could hear this next thing too, is we were talking about, farms and how important it is to have an experience on the farms. The other place is in our unfragmented forest, where our hunters and people who fish want to be able to use those unfragmented forests. And there's where the critical headwaters have to be kept clear and cool so they can get down to our beautiful lakes all over the state. People can fish and recreate safely in them. And those unfragmented forests have to be protected. That's my.
Thank you, Representative Odie.
Did you?
Enjoy your.
Thank you for staying a little longer.
Thank.
Yeah, appreciate all up here.
One quick thing, these farms who are making use of the plan that you have in your amendment still are going to be farms, right? 50% of their income or comes from farming.
So in terms of selling farm products, it says 50% of your product has to come from your farm and no more than 50% from somewhere else. Here, in terms of, it says on-farm business, and I believe if you, the definition of in this area, to be called a farm, you have to either make $2,000 worth of income, have 4 acres, or have a Schedule F, or more than 4 acres currently. So then you would qualify for the required agricultural practices, which would, in our definition of, with the state, that would be, then you would be a farm. So in order, you have to first qualify as a farm in order to get this exemption, and then you could enjoy the exemption. So does that answer your
4
Question?
acres that you tell? Or that you are.
I think it's just 4 acres of land that your business is located on.
Yes, that answers my question. Thank you.
So yeah, if you don't have that, then this exemption doesn't apply.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you joining us and bringing this amendment. So folks, we're just gonna gather in the well of the house to do a straw poll at 1 o'clock. Thank you. My understanding is that the Natural Resources Committee found both amendments not favorable. I want to wait for Mark before we vote anyway. So, thank you.
We have something from JFO to say. I mean, we can, I theorize what the fiscal impact.
No, we won't, we don't.
Okay.
One of the
Yeah.
reasons that floor amendments or late in the game amendments are really hard is because the joint fiscal, especially for this committee, is because the joint fiscal office cannot look at all of the different factors and see what the impact of the revenue of the state is, which is why I am almost always a no on floor amendments that are related to the fiscal anything. Because it's important to actually understand what we're doing.